biggest problem with the school system is that you are pumped full of knowledge. We send our kids out into the world and they don't even know themselves.
Way back, kids were out there in the jungles, the forests. They were doing things to learn. We kind of went from that right back into a classroom made of concrete and have gotten away from that.
You're taking your kid out of school for a term? Oh my goodness. You're deciding that your kid's not going back to school and you're going to homeschool? Oh my goodness. You've got to give yourself permission to think differently, and you've got to give yourself permission to do things differently.
Welcome to Coaching by the Beach, where we help you materialize the vision you have for your business, your life, your family, and the world. I'm Trevor McGregor, Master Coach.
And I'm Leesa McGregor, international best-selling author, speaker, and entrepreneur. Together, we've built an 8-figure empire, and we've broken free from the ordinary to lead lives of extraordinary freedom, impact, and fulfillment. And now we're here to guide you to do the same.
If you've been searching for more success, more wealth, and more freedom, tune in and let's embark on this journey together. All right. Are you somebody that likes to learn? Are you somebody who's curious? Well, if you are, today's episode is for you, because we are here to talk about world schooling. We're here to talk about education. We're here to talk about where the world is going. And nobody better to speak than my wife, Leesa. Leesa, how are you?
I am so good.
Oh my gosh. Why are you so excited about today's episode? Why did we table this for our listeners today?
Well, I have to say, I am feeling so grateful and inspired. This week has been such an amazing reflection for us. We had a world schooling adventure. We took our son to Europe for the last 6 weeks, and we had such an amazing experience. And it really got me thinking about the future of education and what it is that we're doing to create a future for our children, and how are we preparing our children for the future. And so that's what I really want to talk about in this episode. And I feel like because the world is changing, we've got so many new opportunities that we never even thought of. 5 years ago, we weren't thinking about the idea of turning the world into a classroom and traveling.
Right.
And, I think there's just so much to be said for being open to the possibilities that exist right now.
Well, let's go back to the traditional education system. Obviously, I've been through it. You've been through it, where from grades 1 to 12, you literally will sit in a desk and a teacher will stand up at the front of the class and write on the chalkboard, and we get tested for our IQ and all of that stuff. What's good about that system, Leesa, in your mind, and what isn't good about the way that we've always done it?
Well, the reality is that we are still living with an education system, for the most part, that was designed with industrial age values. And so it was designed for a different time. It was designed for a different era. And because of the politics around the education system, because of the way things work, the way the world works, we haven't changed it all that much. And I know for so many of you out there listening, as a parent, none of us are happy with the system. None of us are satisfied with the level of education that our kids are getting right now. And that's a fair feeling. The reality is that the world is changing fast, and we've got to really ask ourselves the question, how are we preparing our kids for the future? And so I think just looking at that, the reality that this system was designed over a century ago.
Yep.
We need an entirely new system. And I used to think a lot about the idea of systems change. How can we create systems change in education? And now my thinking has evolved to, how are we creating an entirely new system? How are we creating an entirely new paradigm for how our children learn and interact with the world? And that's the thing that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about, even before the school system, what experiential learning was. When you think way back, kids were out there in the jungles, the forests, they were in nature, they were doing things to learn. And, we kind of went from that right back into a classroom made of concrete with fluorescent lights and all of that stuff, and have gotten away from that. Why do you feel we need to return to experiential learning?
Well, the reality is that if you think back to anything that you have accomplished in your life, oftentimes that is something that you had to learn yourself outside of the classroom. I even think back to university, and quite frankly, when I think about the amount of time and money and energy that I put into my post-secondary education, it never taught me anything that I ended up using in my career. It never taught me how to build a business from scratch. I had to learn all of those things outside of the classroom. Everything that I ever learned that really got me to got me ahead in life or got me to this place were the things that I learned outside of the classroom. And so we really have to ask ourselves the question, is the learning in the classroom, is the learning in life? And I really believe that experiential learning is the best, and it's an opportunity for us to immerse ourselves in new experiences and new ways of tackling problems and handling problems. Project-based learning is really where it's at, quite frankly. A lot of our kids are we're not really setting them up for success if we're not giving them real world examples and real world projects and things that they can kind of get into, and they can interact with other people. They can collaborate and solve problems, or start ideas, or follow through with ideas. And I think that's really where the world is heading. I think if we focus on this whole idea that our kids are meant to be learning in the real world, not just in a simulated environment, I think that is really the essence.
Yeah. And I think the world is changing. I mean, the world's sped up. We got so much coming at us. We've now got, artificial intelligence and that whole paradigm shift for education. Maybe tell our listeners how that is impacting your beliefs and your thoughts and my thoughts, and maybe share what is world schooling? What is, freedom schooling? And again, perhaps our listener has little kids, perhaps they've got teenagers, perhaps their kids are grown, or maybe they've got grandchildren, but why should they be open to the fact that it's time for change?
Well, this really started with the movement that we started in kids' education. I mean, I had this idea years ago, and I thought about the fact that we spend so much time teaching our kids IQ, right? It's like how to acquire knowledge. It's all about academics and standards and grading, and yet the only thing that ever really dictates our success and happiness in life is our EQ. It's our emotional intelligence, and so I think emotional intelligence is, at a very foundational level, the most important teaching, the most important learning, how to be a good human, how to be a great person, how to be a global citizen. I think those are the things that I think are the most important. But then when you look at what we were just talking about, which is this idea of like the artificial learning, the artificial world of learning versus real world learning, how can we immerse our kids into more experiences that allow them to learn on their feet? And so I got tuned into this idea of world schooling a couple of years ago, and I thought, how cool would that be? Take your child around the world and give them an experience where they will never forget, experiences of different cultures, different countries, like just allow them to have that firsthand experience, not the textbook experience. And that's the thing that's really coming to life for us. I feel like there's a growing movement of us that are realizing that we want freedom. We don't want to be confined. We don't want to be confined to the 9 to 5. And we certainly don't want our kids to be confined to a classroom and that's the only thing that they've got. And so we're living through a time where I know a lot of parents that have made the decision to unschool, to homeschool,
Yeah.
and there's just so many different ways of doing life and educating our kids now, and that's the thing I get really excited about is, the whole idea of creating freedom for yourself and for your family and allowing your child to experience things that they never would have been able to experience. So, an example is, we just took our son on this amazing trip around Europe, and that was all about cultural immersion. So we took
Yes.
him on different tours. We gave him tours of local places. He was able to perform on a stage. We took him to a theater production in London on the West End. He was able to perform on a West End stage. That was absolutely amazing. He had the courage to stand up on a stage in front of 350 people at the age of 8 and perform. And I think back and I go, gosh, he never would have got that experience in the classroom. And we've done other amazing things. We went for a tour of the volcanoes in Hawaii a few months ago. And so we're creating these deliberate and intentional experiences for children to also come together and connect and learn together.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most exciting education that we can give to our children.
Oh, I love that. And again, it doesn't matter if you have one child or multiple children. This is about really giving them the gift of not only going to great places and having great experiences, but interacting with other children from all over the world, which we've recently done with Max as well. So maybe speak to the experience of Max, meeting with people from Europe, from Asia, from Australia, from New Zealand. I mean, that was really magical for him.
It was an amazing experience to allow my son to have this opportunity to connect with kids from around the world. And we went to a conference in Estonia. It was run by Mind Valley, and it was the Mind Valley University. And there was a group of families that came together, and it was a week of learning and immersion. And I will never forget the smile on my son's face. I mean, he was so happy. He's like, Mom, I just made a whole bunch of new friends. And he made friends with children from all around the world. And some of these children did not speak English. So they had different languages. And yet they all came together with the language of play. They were all playing together. They had the time of their lives. And when we asked Max, what was the highlight to his entire trip, we spent 6 weeks traveling. That was it. It was meeting kids and having fun with kids. And it made me realize like that whole idea and vision for having a global village, and
Mm.
connecting more families and allowing families to share ideas and experiences and their own cultural background. I mean, there's nothing richer than that as an educational experience, I feel. And so that's the thing I'm so excited about is, creating those experiences for kids where they get to connect with people that may not be from their postcode, people from other parts of the world.
Yeah.
And that's where we develop empathy and compassion and love for humanity and just the way the world is. There's so many different ways of living and being. And I feel like world schooling is the way to do it. And I will tell our listeners, I mean, the world has opened up and there's so many possibilities now that you can't even imagine. I mean, we have discovered all of these world school hubs. There are places around the world where you can take your children for a month to 2 months to 3 months to have an experience where they get to go to school with other kids and just connect with like-minded families. In fact, that's what we're intending to create now. We want to create world school experiences for other families as well
Yep.
because there's nothing, you cannot put a price on it. You cannot, I mean, private school, international school, this is another level. This is an entirely new level. It's about really giving children this deep opportunity to connect and experience things that they would never otherwise experience. And so I think that this is just the start of something really, really big.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And to think about how I grew up versus having that opportunity. I mean, we're talking day versus night, but whether they're in that, play classroom or they're going on field trips or they're out in nature or they've got to come together to problem solve or create things. I mean, it's such a beautiful landscape of so many different diverse things that, man, I certainly didn't do in the classroom. I was told to read a textbook, get in line, raise my hand to go to the bathroom. I mean, that model, Lisa, I believe is broken. And I know that you share that same thing with me. But speaking to other parents, that we got to hang around with while the kids were in quote unquote school, share the types of people that these are. I mean, what's great about the fabric that makes up these couples that we were blessed to hang out with?
Well, I think it's about having a global mindset. It's about having a mindset that you want your child to be a great global citizen
Mhm.
and you want your child to be a heart-centered person, and really, the thing that was really different about the families that we spent time with is just having a different understanding of the world and realizing that the world is the classroom and there is so much opportunity for our children to learn together in these types of environments. And, I think the most important thing that we can teach our kids is to know themselves. I
Mm.
think back to school, and I think the biggest problem with the school system is that you are pumped full of knowledge. If you think about that, grade 1 to grade 12, it's like you're pumped full of knowledge, academics, grading, standards, and yet we send our kids out into the world as teenagers and they don't even know themselves. How long did it take us? How much soul searching did it take us to really figure out who we were, what we were about, what we were passionate about, what we were good at? And I think that's where school misses the mark. It never really gives us the opportunity to tune into our internal compass, into what makes us tick. What are we passionate about? What are we good at? I think that whole standardized testing, standardized grading, standardized learning, it's not one size fits all. I mean, we're all unique individuals. And so, if there's anything I want my child to learn is that, he is a unique person. He has the capacity to create. He has to be aware of himself and what's happening inside, and what is his heart desiring and what does he want to create for the world. And these are the conversations that we're having. And I think that's it's a difference between having an external focus versus an internal focus. I think it's a mix of both. And I think all of us can agree we want heart-centered humans. Heart-centered humans are the ones that are going to create this world. They're going to turn this world around and create a bright future. And so I think our children, if we get them tuned into themselves and we give them experiences where they can have a taste, they can say, oh my gosh, this is cool. Mom, I love doing this. I love doing that.
Yeah.
Exposing them to different environments and people and cultures and experiences. That's where our kids are going to learn. That's where they're going to grow. And that's where they're going to thrive. If we put them into these new environments, that's where they're going to learn.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And again, when you think back to when we were in school, our teachers would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you could be a doctor, you could be a teacher, you could be a firefighter, you could be a policeman. I mean, those were stereotypes. But going into these world school hubs, I mean, we've got kids, that still might want to pursue medicine and be a doctor or an attorney or something. And they've absolutely got that path if they want it. But there's so much of a variety and things that they could be, do, or have. And I think, again, we're returning to that world of being an entrepreneur, being a solopreneur, and some of the stuff that they get the kids to do where they're building little businesses or they're understanding the value of money or they're understanding, how to leverage other people's gifts and talents. I never had that. And I'm telling you, I think I'd be a different, at a different place today if I did. So let's move on to somebody that says, well, that's easy for you guys because you're entrepreneurs. You can work from anywhere in the world. How would you speak to the people that perhaps have a W-2 job in the US or somewhere around the world and they need to be at home versus giving their child that, that opportunity, even a few weeks of the year or a few months of the year?
That's a great question. Well, the thing I realized is that we've all got summer holidays for our kids. What if you were to make the decision to do something different over the summer holidays? If it's not just a local summer camp, what if you could take them on an experience that was on the other side of the world or, do something different, And I always say, like, give your kids opportunities that you may not have had or, think outside the box. It doesn't have to be the same old summer camp, the same old experience. Like I think that there's so much more, like we discovered, oh wow, there's this drama and music camp in London. Okay, we're going over there. We've got business happening in Europe. So we're going over, we've got a business trip. Why don't we turn this into a trip where we do business, we have the world schooling. And I think that, it's really being creative and finding ways that we can give our kids these opportunities in alignment with what we're doing or what our big vision is. So I hope that answers the question.
Well, it really does. But I think it's also wonderful that you and I have met some unbelievable people who are the parents of these kids, right? They're doing great things in, almost every industry that you can think of to add value to the world when the value you add is really the money that you're going to make that allows you to go out there and do more of it. So it's really, self-fulfilling, and it's something that I think that once you get a taste of it, you start to crave more. True, true.
Absolutely. And I think the other message I would share with our listeners today is that you've got to give yourself permission to think differently and you've got to give yourself permission to do things differently. And I know for a lot of these families that we're talking about, if you make a decision to world school, you're going to come up against some resistance. You're going to come up against resistance. Like, what do people think about that? You're taking your kid out of school for a term. Oh my goodness. Or you're deciding that your kid's not going back to school and you're going to homeschool. Oh my goodness. We've got to be open to the possibilities because quite frankly, we're all in a new social experiment here. We don't know what the future is going to look like. And so we've got to be open. And I think that there is so much opportunity. And if we just give ourselves permission to think outside the box, to do things differently, if you want to take your child out of school, if you're giving them a structured learning experience that could surpass what you think the school is going to do for them, I don't know. I'm being a little controversial here, but I say follow your heart and follow your vision and just give yourself that opportunity because that opportunity, you don't want to let it pass you by, and kids grow up fast. I
Yes.
mean, every parent always says, the days are long, but the years go by so fast. And it's like absolutely the truth. And so if you get really intentional and you say, look, I just want to give my child an amazing experience. Next year is the year that we're going to do it. And don't think that it's not possible. I mean, we came from a place where we didn't think it was possible. We didn't have the location independence. Now we do. We are able to do that. Anything is truly possible.
Well, it's really true. And I've got lots of clients that are doing it now, and we've inspired some of them, and some of them have been inspired by just, again, getting out of Groundhog Day, right? You talk about sending your kid to summer camp, from age 7 to 8 to 9 to 10 to 11 to 12. And that's all they know versus what would happen if you really said, all right, next year is going to be different. Next year, we're going to do it, in a way that would probably not have happened unless you heard of a podcast like this one or heard some inspiration. Because I'm telling you, you're right. Kids grow up so fast. And what happens is you don't want to get to that point where you regret and you look back and you go, there could have been that time where I allowed my kid to go to Europe or go to Asia or go to Australia, which is fantastic, by the way, because again, I'm telling you, there's nothing better than travel. There's nothing better than experiencing people, culture, food, different environments, different weather. I mean, I've got clients that take their kids to Iceland. I've got clients that take their kids to Africa on a safari. And what's great about it is they all come back feeling invigorated, inspired, and like you said, ready to figure out what next year looks like or what the next 2 months looks like or something different. And the fabric that I really find is consistent through there is they love to talk about it and they love to share it with other people, not to force it down their throat, but to say, well, what if there's a new way of thinking and behaving with children's education? What if there was a new way to take our summer vacation? What if instead of, spending all our money on an RV this summer, we could spend that money on an airplane and some beautiful resorts and go have the time of our lives and make magic memories. And so I'm offering this up to the listener where they don't have to do this, but for some of you, you're going to really open up the possibility of doing it. So with that said, Leesa, it's time to get into our 3 to Thrive. And I love the 3 to Thrive, and I know you're going to kick it off with number 1. So take it away.
Well, I think the first question is, what is that dream or idea that's been on your heart for years? What is that experience that you wish that you could give to yourself or your children? What is that? Write it down. I know for myself, it was the drama camp in London. It was like, wow, could my son perform on a stage in the West End? I mean, that was an amazing experience, and I will never forget it. My son will never forget it. And you just got to go for it. Just give yourself permission to plan that dream for yourself or for your child, and realize that, the world is our classroom.
Beautiful. Question number 2 is I'm going to challenge you to have this conversation with your spouse or your significant other. I mean, if you're not listening to this together, you really should be. But part 2 of that is really check in with your spouse and open up the conversation, a possibility, because sometimes, it's not about anything other than tabling an idea, a thought, a concept where somebody has an aha to says, yeah, that's something I'd love to check out more or maybe do some research on or go down that path. And if you want to reach out to us, we'd be more than happy to share with you what our vision for homeschooling looks like and world schooling and freedom schooling. So feel free. But I challenge you to open up the conversation with your spouse. And that takes us to the third and final of our 3 to Thrive.
What is the most impactful learning experience you had growing up? And how can you pay that experience forward to your child, to your family? How can you pay it forward? I think that's the big thing that I take away from this recent trip. I paid it forward. I realized that moment that I gave myself when I put myself on a plane at a very young age and I went to the other side of the world and had to figure out how to find a job and a place to live. And, and then I gave that opportunity to my child to really step out of his comfort zone and do something he's never done before. And he performed on a stage in front of people. And I think that we want to give our children these opportunities. Where is it that you grew the most in your life, and how can you offer that experience or opportunity to your family?
I love that. And again, travel creates magic moments, magic memories, and the kids will probably remember a few things from their classroom, but they'll have way more experiences, memories from traveling this beautiful blue planet. So with that said, we hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If there is anything else that you would like to share or ask about world schooling, freedom schooling, we'd love to support you. Otherwise, Leesa,
peace, love, and palm trees.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today at Coaching by the Beach. If this episode helps you to see your path to more success, more wealth, freedom, and fulfillment, we'd love your support.
Remember to subscribe on your favorite platform.
Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
And don't let your journey stop here. Connect with us in our community of like-minded achievers on all social platforms at Coaching by the Beach.
We're excited to continue exploring this path to freedom with you.